I think we're going to go ahead and get started and be respectful of everybody's time. And I know I need to. I will say, and just to focus in on that a little bit, the need has been so great. We filled up a second group, which semi unheard of, but it also means I've now led for 3 hours today already before I come talk to you. So you might get, you may get discombobulated me, or you may get really fresh stories that just happened today. I don't always know. Today we are talking about listen to your values, and that it's connected very directly to behavioral regulation and finding things that mattered. Come on down and join us in this corner, sir. I think we'll do promotion for you guys. So I have two clinicians here that are both friends that I have some good confidence in, and we know that people are looking right now. Michael, will you show your face with the camera?
I got the opportunity to work under Jason for a couple of years. I'm an intern over at Renew, and yes, it was. I learned a lot of these skills that we're going to talk about today, and have a little private practice out in Overland Park right now. So I still use a lot of the things I learned with Jason in my daily practice.
So I'm going to send out Michael and then now Jason's information.
So I'm Jason Starry. I am starting a private practice at Lifeline Counseling Center in Olathe. So I have a lot of experience with adolescents and with adults, but primarily been working with adolescents the last 15 years, 6 of those years as a counselor. So I'm happy to take new clients and help families and individuals.
This is a shout out. Jason did homelessness work with adolescents for quite a while, helping keeping them off the street and getting them into shelter. And so there's probably very little he hasn't seen in some way, shape, or form. I actually run an intensive outpatient program, which is 5 weeks, 4 days a week. If individual counseling isn't getting the job done, like they plateau, and this happens often, or they don't click with a therapist, or something else happens, we are available we're taking new clients every couple of weeks, and we do take insurance, which is different than a lot of individual clinicians in the area. I just want to hit on, and this is kind of for the recording, but I want to hit on that these are the things we talked about in week 1. We went over parenting dilemmas, just really what the challenges are of parenting an adolescent. We looked at what are typical and cause for concern behaviors. We talked about defense mechanisms and how a lot of the action you see is actually them trying to avoid pain or feeling anything, but it can come out in a ton of different directions. Validation and invalidation, that's what I actually taught this afternoon. Had a lot of young people and families both be like, didn't really know that was invalidating, and I didn't know how to validate my teen, which is really challenging. Talking about family trust banking, so how the process of building trust, and then important conversations to build willingness. And we're going to talk more about willingness today, so that one fits right in. Last time, 2 weeks ago, we talked about cognitive regulation, so that observing your thoughts and feelings, and the advisor voice that gets in there and gets very self-abusing in these young people, where they're beating themselves up, and it is triggering them in ways you can't even see. And they're doing stuff because of what's going on in their head. And emotion regulation, and so they had ability to not only manage the thoughts, but then the emotions, and talk through the distress tolerance cycle. Today, we're going to be talking about how value clarification helps with self and behavioral regulation. And so listening to our values is part of the process today. So I got a couple questions for those of you that are in here. I want you to answer. If you can text us in or chat with us. So the first question, do you have a life philosophy or a life passion? Anyone, shout it out. Anybody even thought about like what direction you're trying to go, Like, are you passionate about cars? I got a buddy, we like just drive by a little car show. It's a car show. It's like a squirrel kind of thing. Keeps him going. Does anybody have any thoughts on what has led to their direction? I look at my life, and I've done federal work and I've done local homelessness work or metro homelessness. The thread that I see through those, so my passion is children and families. And some of them are so diverse between federal work and other things and youth mesh that it's hard to see the thread sometimes, but it's clearly children and families, no matter what I did. So family, yeah, that, you know, if that helps get you up in the morning and get you going, then yes, good. Anybody else? Yeah. Yep. For those of you online, she shared that she has a couple of her own children that are dealing with bipolar, and it has moved her into an advocacy role for NAMI, which is National Association of Mental Illnesses, and just the ability to get to care because it is so disparate between physical health and mental health. I got chastised week 1 for not sharing what you guys said. Anybody else? Do we have anybody chatting?
Yeah, Madison said working with children with disabilities.
Excellent. So Madison said working with children with disabilities. And, you know, I look back at my life, and even at 8 and 10, I loved working with children. And so as I hit high school, some of it was sports, but a lot of it is, especially when I got into college, I'm like, I'm working with kids tomorrow, so I can't lose control tonight or go in different directions. And that's kind of an example of how we hope value clarification turns into actions kind of thing. So how do you overcome challenges that interfere with that philosophy or passion? Yeah, go ahead. Mm. Hmm. So putting that together, she's talking again about mental health and a passion and trying to create a 988 so we have a instant access for mental health, which I love. How do you overcome? Because that's not easy. I've been in this community a lot. What makes it important enough to overcome those challenges? Mm. So what helps you overcome those challenges is that you have a passion because you've seen it lived out, and that you can see a vision for that changing and being better. Is that accurate? Good. Anybody else? How do you overcome challenges? Yeah, Jason. Hmm. Yeah, finding people with the same interests. And again, I'm gonna kind of harp on this, but that's value, what matters to you, and then having some accountability and even some bouncing of ideas and motivation out of that, right? Thank you. Anybody else? So now I want to argue, I'm just kind of setting this up, that we frequently want our young people to overcome whatever challenge gets in the way. And, you know, like, you should just be able to do this because I survived 8th grade or whatever. And we don't really have a good reason for doing that or for convincing them to do that or why to take that on. So we're going to try and work on that today, and get closer at least. And then finally, what are the challenges, and if anybody wants to share, they're welcome to, but what are the challenges interfering with your adolescent's success? And if anybody wants to share on that one, they're welcome to. I know that COVID is a huge one. We know we saw a 330% increase in self-harm during COVID. Lack of Snapchat, social media in general, you know, and that goes back to just the comparison that they do regardless if they have social media, but lack of available services is a challenge right now. Lack of effective services. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I think the effectiveness of therapists, you can ask Michael, I supervised, I push anybody that works with me to look for themes. And so I would share this about how to look for a clinician is they should not be just dealing with the problem of the week. So the young person comes in and says, this has happened, I had a fight with my mom. There might be need for that discussion, but is that actually moving the overall, like, does it fit in with somewhere? And I've worked with a young person for a couple of years now, and we've worked through cycles up and downs, and literally on I say first session, but I'd already had her in group for 4 or 5 weeks, so I knew her fairly well. But and she agreed that finding an identity was the issue. And she would come in, there would be different problems, different things, and we could always tie it back to that. And that's what helped her keep moving forward. I think you should expect that from your therapist, that they can tell you what they're working on, even if that young person needs to vent for one whole day. I mean, because that may happen. So I think those are all challenges that are interfering with your children's success. As far as I can see in the literature, you can't put it in a kid's head. So she asked the question as to whether the emphasis in talking about suicide is putting it in kids' heads. I don't think so. I will just tell you that so many of them are already thinking about it, and it has nothing to do, you know, with any prevention week or something like that. Like, they get there naturally. I mean, and we can even look historically that philosophers got there naturally looking for, I mean, so it's not an inroad. I would say there is some indication that when one happens in an area, other kids see it as a more realistic possibility, and then there's some more attempts, because you kind of see them cluster once in a while, but there is no evidence that asking a kid if they're suicidal causes them to be more suicidal. Is that fair? I mean, Jason, would you agree with that from what you've read and studied? It's also part of why we call this bold. I don't want you dancing around if your kid has said they thought about hurting themselves. A huge amount of them, to the point that Children's Mercy Hospital, if you were here the first week, you can't go in with an earache and not get a suicide screening. All right, that's how they think it's involved in the adolescent mindset right now. And so I would not worry at all about suggesting it. I would worry about getting them to honestly answer. And if I felt like I was getting honesty, then I could deal with whatever. So our kids in group check in every single day. We don't actually talk about this section of the sheet with the rest of the group, but they actually give us a 1 to 10. Where is your suicidal ideation? Do you have a plan? Do you have an intent? I've been semi in awe at how honest that is. You know, that they tell us, knowing we are going to do something about it if they tell us. And that even though that is a 100% arbitrary scale, you know, your 8 may not be the same as my 8, doesn't really matter. You can consistently watch the scores go down as they progress through treatment. And so it is a meaningful indicator to them that they're trying to communicate something or something that's going on in their head. All right, I'm gonna try an exercise here. I've been trying to do a breathe skill every week, or a coping skill, mindfulness kind of skill. And this is one. Mindful listening is actually, if you read the literature, is about like interpersonal communication. And can I look somebody in the eye? Can I read their cues around them? Can I be focused enough on this conversation to be fully engaged in this conversation? Overall, in a group setting, and even like this, that's a semi-awkward process to just try and practice and experience. And we also know that our young people love music. So we've turned mindful listening and practicing mindful listening and use music. So I'm going to play a song, and I would like you guys to, we're going to do this twice. You're going to do this experiment 2 different ways to see if it makes a difference. I'm going to do everything I can to have you guys online hear the song also. We just don't know how this is going to work. So the first time, and mindfulness is not, I can latch my brain on that and stay 100% focused. Mindfulness is the ability to notice that you have another thought come up, recognize it, and then let it go and bring yourself back to whatever you're trying to focus on. All right? It's not just a white-knuckled, I'm going to focus on this. It's, I am present in the moment and fully here, but when I get distracted, you know, so you could get like a high score, as the case may be, if you bring yourself back to what you're trying to do on a regular basis. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, I'm going to play a song and see, I'm going to ask you guys what percentage, so I'm telling you there's a test at the end, how you were able to do. We're going to see if we can get this playing online also.
Stop thinking about if and when I die for it. Now I see that if and when I truly different cries for it. If it's purely panic, and when it's solemn sorrow, and one invades today, or the other spies tomorrow. There's no above up, no sleeve, and scientific miracles. When we go up, the questions that remain. I'm still in love, and it's impossible with your name. And that's what going on is gonna take time, wonder, but until that time, we're gonna see. Trying to stop me, that Nicholas Moore. He's got no friends close, but those who know him know he goes by Nico. He told me I'm a copy when I don't stop me. This whole world wants it's got 2 rings, 3, 3. Try to sing this. To me, transmitting things to me, 1s and 0s. We don't call this symphony. Anybody listening? 1s and 0s. count to infinity. Some zeros around it, around it. There's no above or under. Above is blank leaf, and under is sort of sleep. And around is scientific miracle. Let's pick up and see. Even when we go above, the question still remains. We're still in love, and is it possible we feel the same? And that's when going under starts to take my wonder. But until that time,
All right. I'm going to start over here. How mindful on a scale of like 1 to 100 do you feel like you were listening to that song? Okay. That's fair. What did you try to focus on anything, or did something get in the way? Okay. Did you not like it? Okay, that's fair. Either answer is okay. But yeah, and I cut it a little short that time for you guys. Where was yours at? 90%? You good at focusing in on things? Okay, what were you paying attention to the most? Anything stand out to you? Yeah, okay. And so we've had two people, one said 65 and one said 90, and the 65 felt like the song got a little bit too long, even though they liked it, and had to work at keeping themselves attached. And you've probably got some musical background or something. I mean, like, you're used to that. And so he said 90% and that he could focus on that line. Where were you at, ma'am? Okay. 60%. Uh-huh. Tried to understand the lyrics. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michael, have you ever heard ocean sounds around me? I don't know that I fit any counselor boxes, but I appreciate that and trying to listen to lyrics. Did anything stand out? Did you understand anything that jumped out at you? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. 50%? Yeah. Hard to hear the lyrics. Not her favorite kind of music. Thinking about the day. I like just to put both of yours together. We regularly expect our young people to go do things that they have no enjoyment over, and somehow being able, like, you weren't 100% focused on that? Really? I mean, I like the song personally, and we've found out that young people don't even know this band anymore, even though it's still a current band. But we just think about that. Or we think they just came in from recess, or they just came from doing another activity, and somehow they should be able to jump immediately into this thing that we're asking them to do. Ma'am, what were you at? Okay. Okay. Still not getting any better. Yeah. So she said 30%. and that had a hard time hearing the lyrics, and yeah, all together. Good. I want to go to the back row. Okay. Good. Anything particular jump out at you? Okay. Mm-hmm. Good. Kept bringing yourself back. Good job. I had to too. Finally. Okay. Okay. 80%, she says 80%, and that she enjoyed the music and would have actually liked to dance to it, but couldn't quite maybe make out everything that was going on there. I have a hard time with just music, bringing myself to 100% focused on it kind of thing and just listening. Audio processing isn't my strong suit. And I think this is a really important component of mindfulness, is that there is no one, like we play oceans and people can get, mindful around it, or that somehow we have to be sitting perfectly still. Mindful action or mindfulness is your ability to be focused on it. And so where I am most focused in the world is in a racquetball court. I'm in a very confined space. The ball's going 80, 90 miles an hour. I have to be very attentive to everything. And I consider it a very mindful action then when I am actually paying attention and doing it. It's very mindful. It's not sitting around kumbayaing and whistling or anything like that. So with something like this, I like to do it in two different ways. So I have to find a way that engages me a little bit more. So we're going to listen to the song, or at least the first half of the song again. Oh no, you're not going to do that one line at a time, are you? I need to figure out how to turn that off. So this time we're going to put the lyrics up there, and I'm going to play the song again and see if, and this doesn't always work. Sometimes some people are like, I'm less because of the words, and others are like, I'm more. So just see what it does to try and focus on the words and the music at the same time. So we're going to do it again, probably about half the song again. Were they able to hear it online? Okay, thanks. All right, then there's really not any use to me doing that again. All right, here we go.
Can't stop thinking about if and when I die for it. Now I see that if and when I truly different cries for it. If it's purely panic, and when it's all in sorrow, and when it wakes the day, the other spies come. Why you did? It's no love around it. Still enough, and it's impossible to get the thing, and that's what going on is gonna take. they bring to me, transmitting things to me, ones and zeros. Listen to me, anybody listening, ones and zeros. Down to infinity, ones and zeros. There's no above all. The question still remains, but still enough it is impossible to feel the same. And that's what going on is just to take my wonder, but until that time.
All right, kind of a show of hands. Were you able to be more mindful and more focused on the song with the lyrics out there? All right, I had 95%. Sir, it wasn't helpful to you? Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, I know this song too. But I just want to be clear, this mindfulness is not the same for everybody. All right, and so that's why, I mean, we teach at least 8 different ways to kind of get there, and because one of them works for the majority of them, but some of them hate other ones, and others love other of the mindfulness techniques and that ability to focus in. And so this is how I get mindful around music, is that if I have a song and it catches me, and I'm like, well, that was interesting, or I think there was a lyric there or something that I want, then I'm going to pull the lyrics out and I'm going to listen to it with that. And I'm going to get really mindful and really focused on it. That's just how I do it with music. But part of that is just practicing so I can then use that same technique in other areas. I know, and we see our young people fiddling all the time. I know for a fact, if I'm in a meeting, where a bunch of other people are presenting, if I am not doodling, I'm completely gone into my own head. So I have to be doing something else to allow my focus to be even remotely mindful on the person. All right, I want to just think about that with yourselves, because all of that is magnified in a young person, in that they're more easily distractible. If it is not important to them, we've all like had to work at being focused in part of things that didn't mean much to us. They aren't there yet. They haven't got that level of grit. That's what we're trying to move to. Anything else, anything about the song jump out to anybody as they read the words? It's not a randomly picked song. The young people usually get something out of it. A lot of them feel hounded and surrounded if they're struggling with anxiety or depression. There's multiple ways. 21 Pilots is my favorite current band, mainly because they make their songs and their lyrics match. Like, you feel what they're trying to tell you. And in this case, they're trying to talk about morphing into somebody else to fit in over here, or to figure out who they're going to really be. Their identity is just kind of a little bit in flux at times. And they've got to think, I mean, even within this song, they're thinking about, you know, should I give up? Should I have faith and think things are going to be great? Or should I just, you know, plug away with science and the way the world is, kind of thing? I mean, so it's going through that. With the young people, I talk about their values. This is why it hits on today, and that those are what's going to push them through their problems. And so the whole line about tormentors, what are we here for on this earth if not to just push through our tormentors towards those things that matter to us? And so that's one of the reasons the song is there. The young people also catch the can't stop thinking about if and when I die. All right. Just to go back to your suicide question, I think it is now in culture so much that there is very few young people that haven't heard about it by the time they're an adolescent, for sure, as a possibility that it's an option out there. And so, interestingly enough, this band has a crew that follows them, and had a leaning towards celebrating suicide. Like, as it got less stigmatized in society, there was a group that somehow thought martyrdom might mean something or get them possibilities on. And he came out in this album, and you can tell he likes to use metaphors and analogies all over the place, and it can mean 3 different things. This album has 2 songs that are just flat out I will stay alive. You know, I mean, it is not hidden. There's still good songs, but he's very clear with his audience and who's listening to him that he thinks life is important. Anything else about this? I think I do this with a lot of parents, and I think every single time they recognize, oh, there's like, this is harder than it seems to get my kid to focus on something. You know, we just somehow assume that putting an algebra book in front of them and saying, do your algebra, leads to, you know, 100% focused and getting and doing the best job that they possibly can. Doesn't always work that way if they can't attach it to values. So I want to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about grit, because I want to put some pieces together and kind of end with where the values fit into it. But grit comes from a completely different literature base than, say, clinical psychology. All right, so you've got different treatment modalities that are trying to, how do you help somebody kind of get back to zero, get back to where their life they can do it on their own kind of thing. And the grit comes more from business literature or looking at how to get people toughened up. And I got invited to speak or talk to a team at Garmin who was trying to figure out how to use their watches to help with mental health issues at some point in time. Super neat conversation. But every single one of them had the book Grit on their desk. Like, they were trying to figure out how to implement, because this is what they knew their audience, their business world, everybody else was trying to figure out. It completely matches up with the DBT skills and what they're trying to do with you, and with the DNAV that I've been sharing. And today we're talking about the value or component, listening to your values. So with that, you guys, if you'd open up your packets to page 1, if you downloaded the packet, you can, if not, you can write this. I put it up on the screen for you. I want you to take a minute here and rank the following in importance to success. So kind of 1's most important, 2, 3, 4, however you see those as most important to success. From your perspective, which is most important to the world? So just circle the one you think is most important to the world. From a student's perspective, which is most important? You know, and so what do we think their peers, their school is indicating to them? Give you all a little bit of a minute. They can see that online, right? Okay. Hey, if anybody has an answer for the ranking on chat, let me know so I can share that. Everybody had a chance to rank, at least rank those in order? Anybody shared an answer yet online? Okay. I should just go ahead and learn your guys' names. What's your name? Shelly? Jennifer? Shannon? Lisa? Margot? I do pretty good in the very short term. Maria? Jason? Oh, good name. I'll remember that one. There's 3 of us in here. We dominate right now. All right, somebody, what order did, Shelly, what order did you put them in? And the skill didn't matter? Oh, the first one, importance. Yeah, rank the following in importance. Those 4, like 1 to 4. Okay. Oh, okay. So the most important one in the first category was effort. From your perspective, the world says, what'd you say for the second one? Okay. And from your student's perspective, from a student's perspective, which is most important? Okay. What do you have down? Okay, so at school, they think talent is the most important. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Did you do them 1, 2, 3, 4? Were you doing the first? Okay. 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 I clearly didn't indicate that I wanted those ranked 1 to 4. That's all right. Anybody else have an answer they want to share? Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm. What's your test score, your ACT score? Yeah, the achievement. It's the outcome that they think. Yeah. Okay. Good. Jason? Yeah. So he just shared that, let me get this right, that a young person that's struggling in school probably leans towards talent and achievement. So outcomes and or innate skill to begin with. And that those that are doing all right start seeing effort as a motivating factor, right? More so. Yeah. I asked this, I for whatever reason met with 50 principals at one point in time and asked them about like what they thought their school was. And it was really entertaining to me because 49 out of 50 said that their school was focused on effort. And then I would say 49 out of 50 actually answered the student perspective with either talent or achievement. You know, I mean, and so like I flat out asked them, well, what's the disconnect if you are leading the school and you're trying to convince them and your kids aren't anywhere on that page? But from a principal's perspective in the school, they thought that kids were seeing talent as achievement as the most important. Anybody answer online? Okay. All right. So the literature, so they did a ton of research on this, and this is the only time I ever put formulas up on the board. But what they found in the literature is that talent times effort, so talent is your innate, what are you able to do, times effort equals skill. And then skill times effort equals achievement. And so just to break that down, you know, Michael Jordan was born with a ton more talent than me playing basketball. But incredibly enough, he also had a huge drive and put a massive amount of effort into that. All right. So then he had a huge amount of skill. And then it was still, you could see him put more effort in, and his achievement is at least in the converse or near the top of the conversation for GOAT in basketball, or greatest of all times in that. Does that kind of make sense to people? Like effort is actually in there twice. I got through high school sports without talent, but a huge amount of effort that I turned into a modicum of skill and small skills you got to achieve with that. But finding a way to get somebody convinced that whatever amount of talent they have can turn into more skill by effort is what the grit literature says is most important. Does that make sense to everybody? And so finding a ways to get people to put into, oh yeah, I actually want to do that. So taking that, I want to turn that into what is hope? Because I want to put these all together with values by the end of the time. But somebody tell me what they think hope is. Yeah. Okay, so a desire that I want this and I'm hoping it's going to happen, right? Okay, sure. I think that's one definition of it. Somebody else. Okay, a belief. So that, would that be like the light at the end of the tunnel? Okay, like I believe that if I get to the end of the tunnel, it'll be better than it is right now. I don't know that any of these are right or wrong. I'm going to tell you what grit ends up saying. Anybody else have a definition of hope? I know Jason has one, right? I have a personal definition of hope that's based on, you know, faith and eternal life kind of thing, but that's not what the evidence ends up adding up to. And so I would argue, and what we want from our kids, you can have this packet right here, sir. There's, yeah, I'll grab another on my way back. Grab the cards underneath. The literature says hope is, I believe I can make a difference in tomorrow being better. All right. So it's not just a faith or hope that it's going to change, like that something will come down or the lottery will go over. And so it's not just a hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's actually that I have some control over that. Does that make sense to people? So if I'm working with young people, and I don't know that I believe it's the end all, but a young person runs out of hope if they don't think they can make tomorrow better than today. And as soon as they stop thinking that they have any influence over tomorrow, that's when they're getting into despair cycles and they're very hard to move. I think I am going to skip my next two slides. Really quick, I want to point from the literature and then I'll come back and revisit it when I talk about values. But how do you grow your grit? And I gave you guys this list in your packets. Pursue interests. Find something that fascinates you. So when we started off asking about if you had a life passion or a philosophy or something like that, there is really, really good research to say, and the literature from this area is that it's a spark in a young person, like something that really lights them up and turns them on fire. So finding a passion, something that fascinates you. Practice, practice, practice. That's the effort piece. Get a little bit better every day. I'm really working on digesting the quote for myself that we overestimate what we can get done in any single day, and we underestimate what we can get done in any single year. So we don't set big enough goals, but somehow we think we can pack today with 50,000 items, and it's still not adding up to something big. So I like that quote. Get a little bit better each day. Connect to a higher purpose. Ask yourself how you are helping other people. And again, as we get to digging into values a little bit more tonight, listening to your values, it will be finding something that matters to you, pursuing something that matters to you, getting a bit better of it every day, connecting to a higher purpose. So what matters about this to me? Cultivate hope, the expectation that our own efforts can improve the future. So that's kind of the result that, just to put it in sentences, I resolve to make tomorrow better kind of hope versus I have a feeling tomorrow will be better kind of hope. Does that differentiation make sense to people? And then, surround yourself with gritty people like Batman. Batman's a gritty person. So putting that all together, if you end up listening to all four of these episodes, I'm going to end up talking about all four of the DNAV components. And people really, out there, they want their kid to have resilience. That's a big key word, or persistence or grit or willpower or courage. And interestingly enough, these are values, and I can't just, you can't just have courage. Like, I don't wake up and have courage. I decide today to do something that's challenging. That kind of scares me, all right? And then the next day, I can take a little bit bigger challenge and a little bit bigger challenge. And so I'm growing. So how do I get myself to a place that I'm willing to take a little bit more courage every day? How to grow an adolescent or anyone's grit. And this is where we come back to the bold and why I've titled it bold. Breathing deeply and slowing down. All right? Recognizing, are there thoughts and feelings getting in the way of me moving? And those are the two we've talked about so far over the first couple of weeks. Listening to my values, we're going to keep going into tonight, and then deciding on actions and doing them. So instead of, so it says observing thoughts and feelings. It's not saying those are 100% how I'm going to make my decision, observing them, looking at that advisor, listening to that advisor, and say, is that what you want to do with your life? All right. So I'll talk. That's a wacky looking slide. It's not how it looked in my desk this morning. The valuer is the part of you working out what you value, what's in your heart, what you care about, what makes your life meaningful. So if I'm going to argue anything for your young people, it's that you help them find things that matter to them. All right? It may not be algebra, but if it's theater and they know they have to go to school to be in theater, you can connect that. Why am I doing this? I am doing this because I want to be in plays. I want to be a part of the band. I want to be on, the classic examples. I had a young person who really wanted to play baseball, really didn't want to go to school. Can't play on the school baseball team without actually going to school. So at that point, the value, what mattered to him of baseball, helped us build him an exposure plan. Like, it wasn't overnight he showed up at school all day. But as we worked through an exposure plan or a ladder, and we're going to talk more about ladders next week or 2 weeks from now, we use the word values, and you can think of it like a compass. You can learn about value to help keep you live well, keep you doing the things you love, and getting unstuck when you are having a hard time. All right. And so I think of our woman who is working with NAMI. Like, you run into an obstacle, and it's like, I know what helped my young person. I'm assuming, and I want more of that for other people. And so I'm willing to keep plowing through this. Is that true? Yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Again, it gets you through that stuckness point without thinking that pain, because a young person, stuck becomes pain. Like, I don't think I can do this. They are actually in some mental pain. All right. There are things that are really hard. We've talked about, like, the adolescent, what skills they actually have to be successful as adolescents the first week, and also what regulation categories that they had to get through. And so in this case, I want to talk about the dialectics or the extremes, the confounding of values of adolescence. All right. And so confounding just means this is hard to figure out for them. All right. This is part of what they have to do as an adolescent, is figure out how to navigate these things. Do I want to take on challenges, or do I want to complain about my environment? Can you guys see how those could be opposites? All right. And I would argue that the young person who takes on every single challenge is actually leading to some troubled behavior also. All right. If they're diving, like, I'm going to dive in on every single, so the extreme of that one's not okay. And if the person who's sitting in their basement just complaining about the world, they're also not actually acting on their values. All right. Something that, quite frankly, we as adults put in front of adolescents a lot is that all of this is preparation for the future. All right. You're going to school. Why are you taking the ACT? So I can get into college. Why are you going to college? So I can get a job sometime in the future. Why am I working now? So I can have a car and a boat, or I can pay off my student loans, whatever that looks like. But we're talking to our young people all the time. It's not purposeful. It's just a part of the way we talk, is that young people are actually supposed to be living for the future instead of something meaningful right now in this day. So do we see how those are, again, opposites or dialectics kind of things. And so I know of families, I know of young people who spent so much effort preparing for the future. They, you know, college 4.0, they had done everything, their resume was amazing, but they'd been so focused on it that they didn't know how to live for what was important and what mattered to them. And they got to college and like, holy moly, this is a whole different ballgame. I got to do all of this on my own without somebody helping me. And I think some of those are the saddest, is that young person who had what looked like everything going for them, and then they go to college and it overwhelms them. They come home, they relax, and they're like, oh, I can't stand this pain. They go back and then they try suicide. And I've heard of multiple cases of that. With, you were talking up to 22, our young adults are struggling with this just as bad as the adolescents. All right, and then if you're only living for what's important, which would also be in the moment, you're not actually getting prepared. Like, I just want to have fun right now. That would be the extreme of that side. Can always get more time versus living in the now. All right, you know, adolescents or, you know, younger, like, there's always going to be time to do that. Versus living in the now. Family values versus identity creation, and why that's a dialectic is that your family has a set of values, whether it's clear or not, it is there and present. And for any young person to actually create an identity, they have to come up with their own values. And that may or may not be in complete alignment with your family values or your personal values. All right. And so, do they fully accept the family values and feel like they're getting beaten down because nothing that matters to them is allowed in the world? Or are they fighting every single value you put in front of them because they are the most important thing, and their values and what matters to them is the most important thing? So, and then life enhancing versus life draining. And you look at that life draining, I'm going to put some of the, like, I don't have any problems with a healthy or a dose of video games or a little bit of online time. But when it becomes, when you go to that extreme, it's not adding value and vitality to your life if you're doing that all the time. All right, or very rarely is it. So that's what, one of those things would be life draining and one would be life enhancing. All right, either extreme on any of those leads to behavioral challenges because the valuer influences behavioral regulation. All right, unskilled behavioral regulation looks like impulsive behaviors such as cutting classes, blurting out in class, spending money, risky sexual behavior, risky online behavior, binging and or purging, drugs and alcohol abuse, aggressive behavior, suicidal and non-suicidal self-injurious behaviors. Can you see how a lot of those are on one side or the other of those dialectics and those opposite things? Because they're not figuring out how to navigate the middle path to get through them. Skilled behavioral regulation looks like the ability to successfully regulate one's thoughts. And regulate in this case doesn't mean I can tell myself what to think. It means I can unhook from that thought. I can recognize that's a piece of advice, and behaviors in different situations. Effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating. Because if something matters to you, you're motivated to get it done. Along with the capacity to take action, sustain motivation, and persevere through challenges towards an identified goal. My favorite example of the valuer, like, not going towards the identified goal and changing behavior is, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and it's a rough year to do that. But a while back, the Bengals, which is in our division, and they are big rivalries, had a playoff game, and Bengals don't get to the playoffs very often, but had a playoff game won with less than 30 seconds on the clock. They had the lead, we had the ball, and like 60 yards to go before we could even kick a field goal that would win the game. Had a pass play. I don't quite remember what happened, but one guy got called for a personal a penalty. Got so mad that they got called for a personal foul, which is another 15 yards. That turned into this ruckus kind of fight, and another guy came in and got on the Bengals team, got another personal foul. They literally moved the ball 30 yards. We kicked a field goal and won the game and knocked them out. All right, Those two guys, all they had to do was go sit on their hands. They win a playoff game for the first time in their careers. But was the identified goal important enough? Did that matter enough to them in the moment versus their pride or their anger or whatever else? Can you see how a young person who gets caught in the emotional cycle has a hard time controlling their behavior? So what is a value? A value is chosen. It is not forced upon you. Like behaviors can be forced and expected, but a value is chosen. It's a quality of action, all right? So a value is, I'm going in this direction. I just asked this question and sadly enough had an 8th grader not know the answer to this. Can you go west from Denver? If you go to Denver, which is west of here, can you keep going west from Denver? Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Where would you land? California. If you're in California, can you still go west? All right. You might take a boat. You might have to take a plane or something. But if you land in Asia, can you still go west? Yes. That's a value. A value isn't something like I can land at this destination. I am now an adventurous person. All right. You have to keep moving towards it. It's not an outcome. So I am not necessarily courageous. It's not a goal. It's a value. This is the direction I want to go into, like a compass. It's constructed from language and interactions with the world, all right? So your goal as a parent, our goal in our program is to help adolescents explore and construct their own values and value language. I would argue my parents did a really good job of making their values conscious and shown to me, and so I knew why they were doing them, so when I picked them for myself, or they said I had to do it, I was okay with that. 90% of the time. Now, at the end of the day, at 18, I still wanted to move out because I didn't want to live under their rules. And I really didn't break any of them when I left, right? I mean, I still lived by their rules, what they had said, but I had taken on their values because we had talked about it. Discussions of values is held lightly, all right? I love pottery. I've been doing pottery since I was 8. I actually own a pottery wheel that, mind you, in the 8 years that I've owned it, I have never turned it on. I have not used it, all right? I love pottery. I have 4 children under 10 and a busy job, whatever. I still like pottery and would love to get back to that someday. But is that a value that I am acting out today? No, it is not. So that's why like a young person could say, I love guitar, I love ukulele, I love these things. And yeah, okay, you do. What are the actions that are coming from them? They're dynamic, they change for us all the time. I can look back at my 20s and traveling was a clear value. And I hit, by the end of my 20s, I had gotten all 50 states and 22 or 23 countries. You know, I really love traveling. I went to Milwaukee this weekend. You know, I mean, I just don't get anywhere right now. I still love to travel. It's just not, this time period of my life doesn't allow that to happen. So, you know, they're dynamic, they change, they're intrinsically reinforcing. So you do it because it's more important and meaningful, and it's both. It just feeds itself. And this is why we're trying to get kids to take on things that matters. Supports flexible thinking and a growth mindset. It increases willingness, which is the opposite of willfulness. So willfulness is refusing to tolerate a situation or giving up, trying to change a situation that cannot be changed, or refusing to change something that must be changed. Just for a very fun example, again, I've got an adoptive young man, or we've adopted a young man who has trauma and he wants to win, which means he wants to be right. There really isn't this effort put in. Now in soccer, effort, all right? Math, not so much. Somehow he just thinks he should magically understand addition and subtraction and like it should just happen, right? And, you know, trying to change, like he doesn't, and he just shuts down. I mean, he just completely shuts down. I spent an hour on first grade math last night. I will tell you, it was not intellectually challenging for me. It was emotionally challenging. Willfulness looks like the terrible twos. No, I'm not going to do anything. The opposite of doing what works. All right? I've done this 3 times. It's failed all 3 times. I'm going to do it again. Can look like stuck or fixed thinking. This one I want to hit on. I really like like, what would be the phrases running through my head or a young person's head if they had fixed or stuck thinking? All right. Might be, I've already decided without listening to other people. I am the only one that can be right. I will interrupt people when they are talking. I do not listen to other people's ideas. My mind is not open to new ideas. I'm afraid of new things. I know everything already. I boss other people around to get what I want. I get really upset over any kind of change. I hurt other people's feelings. I don't listen to what other people are saying. I make choices quickly without thinking about their consequences. So I have young people read that list and actually check the ones that they think and hit on. All right. Willingness. Willingness is allowing the world to be what it is and participating in it fully, doing just what is needed. No more, no less. It's being effective. Listening carefully to your wise mind and deciding what to do. When willfulness doesn't budge, ask, what's the threat? We ask that a lot with our young person. And willingness looks like flexible thinking and using a growth mindset. And to put that into words, as I think about others, I keep an open mind. I think about what I'm going to do before I do it. I'm patient. I let the person finish explaining without interrupting. I listen to others. I keep my mind open to other ideas and possibilities. Willing to try new things. I try really hard to deal with change. I let other people have their way too. I'm able to compromise. I am someone you'd want as a friend. So right now I'm going to show a short video on the fixed versus growth mindset. And that would also be fixed or stuck thinking versus flexible or growth mindset. So do we think I can start this, Ron? I'm going to let you.
Researcher and Professor Carol Dweck uses the term mindset to describe the way people think about ability and talent. Dweck delineates between two different mindsets that exist on a continuum. The first is the fixed mindset, which suggests that your abilities are innate and unchangeable. The second is a growth mindset, which views it as something you can improve through practice. In a fixed mindset, you view failure as permanent, but with a growth mindset, you see failure as a chance to learn and even pivot. Those with a fixed mindset are more likely to view critical feedback as a personal attack, while those with a growth mindset will see it as a chance to improve, where they can develop new systems. With a fixed mindset, you're more likely to choose easier tasks and put in minimal effort. After all, if talent is fixed, why bother improving? Why even try? But with a growth mindset, you're more likely to embrace challenging tasks and work hard to improve. Those with a fixed mindset are likely to give up when they face an obstacle. Meanwhile, those with a growth mindset will view obstacles as a chance to experiment and solve problems. In a fixed mindset, the focus is on measurable accomplishments. But with a growth mindset, the focus is more on a journey of continual improvement. With a fixed mindset, you're less likely to take creative risks. But with a growth mindset, creative risks are simply a way to innovate and improve. Ultimately, your mindset influences everything from creative risk-taking to how you view feedback to whether or not you finish difficult tasks. And in the end, it's one of the greatest factors in determining whether or not you grow and improve in your abilities.
Okay, if you guys would all turn to page 2 in your packet. It's a fun little experiment. You can do it on yourself. You can think of a young person in your life. And I want you to think of these on a continuum, all right? Because they're not like just all one or all the other, just like everything else. But a fixed mindset believes intelligence is static. That's the same as saying talent is static, all right? Leads to a desire to look smart and therefore a tendency to avoid challenges. So in the category of challenges, you know, I take on 0 challenges would be a 1. And on the other side, if you believe effort matters, that intelligence can be developed, skills can be developed, embraces challenge. So again, that young person that embraces every single challenge would be like a 10. So I want to give you a minute to look over this list and obstacles. Do they give up easily? Do they persist? See effort as fruitless or worse? Or do they see effort as a path to mastery? Do they ignore even useful negative feedback? Or do they learn from even criticism that may not be handled very well? And then finally, with the success of others, do they feel threatened by the success of others, or do they find lessons and inspiration? And a 1 on feeling threatened would be like their best friend gets an award and they feel threatened by that. And that happens. And then a 10 would be literally the person who's reading every biography they can get their hands on, somehow thinking they can build themselves into a perfect life. So think of your young person and give them some rankings on this. I have a very fun, we do this, the young people actually rank themselves. And so you can take this or download a packet and have your young person actually rank themselves. And then I give them the opportunity to rank their parent, which makes the discussion really fun because the parents come in and rank them. And you have, well, okay, here's what I think about you, and here's what I think about you, and they have a conversation about it. It's really, it ends up being a lot more engagement, and they're usually a lot closer when they think about it that way, and they take on 2 perspectives. So I want you to think about that. Again, they're on a continuum of some kind, and the way to move towards a growth mindset, and we're gonna watch a longer video here on how to go about that. But for emotional and, you know, cognitive and behavioral kind of things, the motto of BOLD, so breathe deeply and slow down, observe your thoughts and feelings, listen to your values, the direction you want to go, and decide on action, is a process. And just within our program, we teach 8 to 10 breathe skills, plus a whole range of taking a break skills, like 45 of them kind of thing, to help in that area. There are multiple ways to learn how to observe your thoughts and your feelings and unhook from them and recognize and label them. And then there are multiple ways and tools that you can actually use for listening to your values and then deciding on actions. So with that said, I want to watch, this is longest video, we're getting close to done, but this one walks through, if you want to help somebody move towards a growth mindset, this video actually gives you some ways to do that. Thanks, Ron.
This video was made possible by Brilliant, a problem-solving website that helps you improve your mental capabilities. There is a psychological trait that all successful people appear to have in common. It's been co-signed by Bill Gates, and NASA uses it as a criteria for selecting potential systems engineers. This concept is called the growth mindset, a term originally coined by Carol Dweck. People with the growth mindset believe that intelligence or skill in any field can be developed through effort. Basically, they believe that anyone can nurture their abilities in anything. The inverse of the growth mindset is the fixed mindset. People with this one believe that intelligence and skill are innate. It's something that we're born with. We're either born gifted or not. There's no room for change. Basically, they believe intelligence is fixed from birth. In this essay, we'll explore why the growth mindset is the better one and how we can develop it.
So we talked a little about what the growth mindset is. The belief
that intelligence and skill in any field can be developed. But let's also talk about what it's not. It's not magic. It won't help you get everything that you want out of life, and it won't make you the next Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. However, it is a very powerful lens with which to see the world, and it can improve the probability of your success. All of us are a mixture of both the growth and fixed mindsets. In some areas of our lives, we operate with the growth mindset. In others, we operate with the fixed mindset. Because of this, I want you to think of both mindsets like a pair of glasses. Some people wear the growth glasses more often, and others wear the fixed glasses more. But we all wear both in different situations in our lives. Although we should all strive to wear the growth ones much more than we wear the fixed ones. But why? Well, a lot of research seems to suggest that people with the growth mindset are more successful than people with the fixed mindset. For example, a study found that students who held a growth mindset were 3 times more likely to score in the top 20% on the test, while students with a fixed mindset were 4 times more likely to score in the bottom 20%. Another study found that when 7th graders participated in a growth growth mindset program, they were able to avoid a drop in grades which usually occurs in middle school. People with the growth mindset are much more resilient, which allows them to overcome challenging and difficult situations. Because they prioritize learning over failure, they're unafraid to take risks. They prioritize growing over stagnation. On the other hand, people with the fixed mindset don't want to challenge themselves because they believe talent and intelligence are fixed. They look at failure as an assault on who they are as a person. To them, lack of knowledge is an indicator of stupidity, and failure once means failure always. A person with the growth mindset believes that they're always in a state of flux and transformation. So they don't attach their identity to the results. Instead, they focus on the process of growing and learning. Few people will deny that the growth mindset seems to map nicely onto reality. We know that the brain can continue to learn until the day we die, thanks to the field of neuroscience. It also seems quite intuitive that people must work hard and persevere despite obstacles to end up being successful. So the growth mindset seems to be a much more accurate view of reality than the fixed mindset. People with the growth mindset are living in greater accordance with reality than people with the fixed mindset. They can make truer decisions, whereas a person with the fixed mindset lives in a greater state of delusion. What do I mean by this? Imagine two entrepreneurs. One has the growth mindset and one has the fixed mindset. They are both in the early stages of their entrepreneurial journey. Suddenly, they both encounter a roadblock and are forced to make a decision. The one with the fixed mindset sees the long and arduous journey ahead of her due to the roadblock. The journey is in the way of what matters to her, the result. She believes that entrepreneurship should come easy to those who are destined for it. She decides to quit. The one with the growth mindset sees the long and arduous journey ahead of her and smiles. The journey is the way for her. The journey is what matters. Taking the role of a student, she accepts the long and arduous path as her teacher. She will allow it to mold her into the person she needs to become to achieve the results she desires. She decides to persist. When we look at both of these examples, most of us would agree that the entrepreneur with the growth mindset has a greater understanding of reality. Her decision is truer. We know that things take time, effort, and strategy to achieve, but it's often difficult to put that kind of thinking into practice. So, how can we develop the growth mindset? The first key to developing a growth mindset is actually very simple: understanding that it exists and that it's possible for the brain to change. Neuroscience has shown that our brains are not fixed, and in fact, they're very malleable. We can always grow and learn new skills. For example, a study found that taxi cab drivers develop more gray matter in their brains to help them navigate more effectively in large cities. They also found that the amount of gray matter in their brains was correlated with the number of years that they had been working as a taxi driver. This suggests that the act of driving a taxi led to changes in their brains which allowed them to be more effective at their job. The second key is to focus on process over results. Dweck has said that we should praise others for their efforts and their process, rather than praising them for their results. For example, it's better to say, you studied very effectively for that test and your hard work really paid off, rather than, you're so smart, you got an A. In the former example, we're focusing in on and praising the student's process, which is something that they can control. Hopefully, they'll learn to associate themselves and their results with that process. However, in the latter example, we praise the student for a result, which is ultimately out of their control. Unfortunately, this student will likely begin to associate themselves with the result. I think it's really important to emphasize that it's not easy to pass a growth mindset on to others. It's not as simple as telling someone that they're a hard worker and that they just need to put in the effort. They need to internalize that they can change their results by changing their process. So they need to know how to effectively create a process, alter it, and produce results from that process. My solution to this is to keep a journal. Pick an activity that you want to get really good at. For example, let's say that I want to get really good at math. In the journal, I would write down my process for studying mathematics. I would list out the steps and put a quantifiable measurement to as many things as I can. For example, my process might look like this: review my notes once a day, do 10 practice problems a day, and meet with my professor for 30 minutes a week. So my process has been solidified and everything has been quantified. Now I need to designate a result that I'm looking for. I need a target to aim at. Let's say that I'm looking for a grade of 80% or higher on my next exam. When I get my exam mark back, I compare it to my goal. If it's higher, then I know my system works, but I can still go back and alter parts of it to see if I can do even better. Or I can try and optimize it. Maybe I can spend less time reading the textbook and more time doing practice problems. If my grade comes back lower, I definitely need to go back and refine my process. process. I believe this method of keeping a journal, creating a process, and refining it until the desired outcome is achieved will help promote a growth mindset. It keeps our mind focused on a changeable process. The results are measured and paid attention to only as an indicator of how well our process works. The process either works as intended or it doesn't, but it says nothing of the person. The process is always malleable. It's not that it doesn't work, it just doesn't work yet. I think another good idea is to seek advice from peers and teachers. Look for those in the same position as you or those who have already done what you're trying to do. Ask them about their process and see how yours measures up. You might find things that they do or have done that you would like to adopt into your process. Read books about people you admire. Try to find details about their process that you can incorporate into your own. Lastly, do challenging things. To even have a chance of fostering the growth mindset, you have to step outside of your comfort zone. People who don't leave their comfort zone begin to believe that their success is due to innate talent because everything comes so easy to them. For example, a student who was never challenged in school will begin to believe that they're innately smart. I get A's, therefore I'm smart, they might say. The result comes so easy to them that they don't even think about the process. Unfortunately, all they see is the result and they get attached to that. When they inevitably get a bad grade, they'll think that they're dumb. They lose faith in themselves because they didn't get the result that they're used to receiving so easily. On the other hand, going outside of your comfort zone forces you to adopt the growth mindset to avoid shattering under the weight of adversity. You have to focus on and adjust the process because you can't possibly achieve the result you desire with your current process. By definition, that's what it means to step outside of your comfort zone. So now you know about the growth mindset, why it's important, and some ideas on how to develop it. Keep in mind that it takes a lot of effort to develop and that it'll always be a battle to avoid falling into the fixed mindset. People will say certain things or things will happen that trigger a fixed mindset in us. It's important to notice when this is happening and try to avoid getting fixed in place. I'd like to close out with this quote from Carol Dweck. The path to a growth mindset is a lifelong journey, not a proclamation.
This video was made possible by Brilliant.
As we already
So again,
know, it's important to
I'm going to argue that BOLD is a process for doing that, to make wise mind actions and to move towards things that matter to you. I'll flip through these pretty quick because I've been talking about values, and I want to give you a tool to help in both helping your young person clarify their own values, but also as a family, clarify the values that you want to have. All of you here in the stadium, your gift was a set of value cards. It's kind of fun to be able to sort them out. You also have the whole list of values in your packet, so you can keep it written down, and online they have it in their packet. And on page 4, you've got the instructions online. You guys have it on the card. And what we do with this in group is that the young people sort through, and they sort the cards into 3 piles. All right, doesn't matter much right now. We're not saying I'll never matter, that value will never matter to me. Matters some right now, and then matters most right now. All right, and then we have them spread out the most matters. They talk about it. We actually ask them to write those down and use that as part of their motivating factors. What values are they moving towards? You can do that as a family with the whole deck. You can have every individual do that in the family and say, what are our family values? And this is what I do when I do a family therapy session with somebody, is every person in the family is going to do this and come up with their list of the ones that most matter. And then we're going to mix those together. And then we're going to break it down until we get 3 that family agrees on, that we can then actually attach actions towards. And you've got that on page 5 in your, page 4 in your binder. You know, make a list of actions towards. How do we move towards that value? All right, and then what actions are getting in the way of us moving towards this? You know, and this comes up, okay, so a family wants to focus on responsibility. That might be one in here, and they say that an action that gets in the way of that might be dishonesty. So a young person being dishonest about something would be getting in the way. So in that case, you both have, you've made a list of things that would add up to more responsibility. You know, you feed the dog every day, you do these things, whatever. You have this list, but you also have the list of things that the family agrees gets in the way of that. Values increase willingness. And so going through and having a young person pick out their values and describe and share those with you increases their willingness across the board to try things. And willingness was a key component to growth mindset. I was hoping to have enough time to make you guys do it here as we were doing this live, but this is going to end up being a homework project for you. You've got a deck of cards, you've got it written down. If you wanted to do it for more members of the family, you can actually download the packet and print it out yourself. But I don't like to sit here and I can't hand each of you values that are going to matter to your kids. I want to give you a tool to figure out what those are for you and your family. This also helps with that whole family values versus identity creation, because you can have a meaningful conversation about where their values differ from yours as a family. And this does not in any way, shape, or form preclude saying, well, in this house, while you're using my resources, these values will take precedent. And as soon as you're out on your own and paying for your own life, you know, some of these, try not, I mean, that would be how they didn't say it that blatantly, but in their household, their rules were going to be followed, and that should be, you know, acceptable. You know, that should be, that's actually setting really good boundaries for the young person and telling them how to do it. You have a card in there, and it's also in the packet, about moving out of that comfort zone. So you can create a whole list of actions towards this, and even think about it like, oh, that one we could do right now. We're all pretty good at that one, so that's a 2 or a 3. That one is going to take us actually all working on this as a family until we're having, I don't know, a family meeting or something. That might be a growth zone. So you give that an 8 or a 9. And you do this just like an exposure ladder. Let's not start with the 9s and 10s the first day and expect those to happen. Let's do the 2s and the 3s and the 4s a bunch, and then build and get better and better each day. All right, does that make sense to everybody? So, are there any questions? I've actually hit my timeline, and want to let you go. You did get the list in paper with the 3 matters, a little matters, some right now. So, if you're not a card sorter, you can, you know, use the paper and get them there. You can talk about all the values, just going down the list with your young person. Would also be a meaningful conversation. What does that mean to you? This is what it means to me. Much like those conversation cards that we talked about the first week, or conversation questions we talked about the first week. So again, any questions? I think that's, sort the piles. This is what we do, and I will tell you, this is exactly how we try to do it. Yeah, I am literally giving you everything that we do in group. I mean, there's more skills. I can't get to all my skills, but this is exactly the process we ask young people that are in our group to go through, and their families. Oh, next week, not next week, October 20th. All right, 2 things. One, with this size audience, and I don't expect it to jump up hugely in person, we're going to move to Renew, which is where I work. It's a little more intimate setting. Technology is a little easier for me to control. We will make sure you hear about that and see it in your invitations and get emails about that. We will be talking about interpersonal regulation, so that, you know, having relationships, keeping relationships, also the ability to say no. And this is not saying no to chores. This is saying no to things like peer pressure and, you know, physical contact you don't want, and those kind of things. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about how to deal with ongoing pain, because it doesn't just go away super easily. And I'm going to make sure we leave a little bit of time to build one of these growth ladders and put things in there for a direction you want to help move your young person or your family in. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for sitting up close front. Thank you guys for joining us online. I just appreciate your guys' commitment to this, and I hope you got something useful out of that. Thank you. And if you need a therapist, Jason Starry, Michael Lusher, lushercounseling.com, and Jason, and I'll send out both their contact information with the video link and the packet link. I don't know when. I'm leaving on a vacation to Disneyland on Friday, so I don't know when that'll happen. Huh? Thank you. Yes. think that's the best possible response is good luck.